a strategy girl appeared beside my boyfriend. She carefully planned a hero saves the damsel scene on the road my boyfriend often took. She arranged for two thugs with dyed yellow hair to drag her into an alley. "Help! Help me!" she screamed and struggled, desperately crying out in my boyfriend's direction. The boys walking with my boyfriend rushed in one after another. Only my boyfriend stood still, holding my hand. He didn't move at all. Chapter 1. Are you not going to help? I asked Paul, nervous and confused. After all, in last night's dream, he had been the first one to rush in, but now, he just looked at the dark alley and shook his head. His expression was so calm it was almost cold. No, the scene from the dream had become reality. Yet Paul's reaction was completely different. My mind was in chaos. I was about to say something else when I saw the two thugs abandon the girl, cursing as they ran deeper into the alley. Paul's friends came out of the alley together with the girl. Under the dim streetlight, I finally saw her face clearly. I froze in shock. She looked exactly like the strategy girl from my dream. Tears clung to her delicate face. When she looked at Paul, they rolled down one by one. "Senior, thank you for letting them come save me." Paul tightened his grip on my hand and glanced at her indifferently. "I didn't. You're thanking the wrong person." Her expression stiffened instantly, as if she couldn't believe it. When she noticed Paul and me holding hands tightly, she frowned slightly. Then she skipped over me and thanked the others instead. They waved it off casually. "No need to thank us. Just doing the right thing." "Yeah, those scumbags, if I see them again, I'll beat them again." "Hey, aren't you the art student who just transferred? I think I saw you when I went to find Angelica." The one speaking was Paul's friend Luis. Angelica was his girlfriend. The girl wiped her tears, eyes still red, and smiled gently at Luis. "Yes, hello, Senior. My name is Selena." My heart jolted again. Even her name was exactly the same as the girl in my dream. Was this really just a coincidence? Was the dream really just a dream? Fragments from the dream kept flashing through my mind, and I couldn't help staring at Selena. The wind messed up her hair. She lifted a hand to tuck it behind her ear and spoke again. "It was really lucky you all helped just now. Let's exchange contact info. I'll treat everyone to a meal another day." Just as expected, everything was unfolding exactly like the dream. And yet, slightly differently. In the dream, Selena had only added Paul on WeChat. Now, I watched her unlock her phone and open her QR code. When she held it out, she hesitated for a moment in front of Paul. Then she quickly moved it away and handed it to Luis instead. Luis beamed as he scanned the code. After adding her, he waved his phone at her. "Don't forget to accept it, Junior." Selena nodded, then passed her phone to the other boys one by one. After everyone had added her, she finally looked up at Paul, pretending to be calm. She said, "Senior, you should add me too." My heartbeat spiked. In the dream, after they added each other, Selena began her calculated pursuit of Paul. Paul went from polite rejection, to growing irritated, to cold indifference, until our wedding day, when Selena appeared to steal the groom. She said she would die without Paul. In the end, Paul let her pull him by the hand and ran out of the wedding venue in front of everyone. Chapter 2. The wind grew stronger and stronger. I held my breath, waiting for Paul's answer. A moment later, Paul lifted the hand that was tightly interlaced with mine, his voice cold and sharp. "In front of my girlfriend. How do you even have the nerve to ask to add me?" The smile on Selena's face froze instantly. She clearly hadn't expected Paul to be so blunt, so merciless. Embarrassed, she bit her lower lip. The phone she had raised trembled slightly, yet she didn't put it down. "Senior, I didn't mean anything else. I just..." Before Selena could finish, Paul's gaze had already slid past her indifferently. He turned to look at me, his expression softening at once. "Are you cold?" As he spoke, he reached out and gently adjusted the scarf around my neck. I shook my head and looked up at him. Even though he was right in front of me, I inexplicably felt as if we were separated by a lifetime. After fixing my scarf, Paul naturally rubbed the top of my head again and said warmly, "We've been delayed for so long. Are you hungry? Let's go eat." His slightly cool hand held mine as he started walking forward, and my feet followed instinctively. In a daze, I couldn't tell whether this was a dream or reality. After taking just 2 steps, the person beside me stopped again. He didn't turn around, only tilted his head and called out to Luis and the others, "Aren't you coming?" Only then did the group react, hurrying to follow. Selena was left standing alone where she was. Even after we'd walked quite far, I still felt a gaze fixed firmly on my back. I turned around and suddenly met Selena's eyes. They were filled with resentment, bitterness, and fury. The next second, that look vanished. Selena smiled at me, looking at her pretty, flawless face. I almost wondered if I'd imagined that look just now, when we reached the place to eat. Everyone gradually brushed off the earlier incident and started chatting and laughing. Only Luis kept his head down, scrolling through his phone. He seemed to be looking at moments, zooming in on photos from time to time, a smile curling at the corner of his mouth. If I wasn't mistaken, it was probably Selena's moments. I thought of his girlfriend, Angelica. If she saw her boyfriend intently scrolling through another girl's posts, looking like he was quietly falling for her. With her introverted and sensitive personality, she'd probably feel awful. For some reason, I suddenly felt as if I could empathize with her, sharing her feelings. I hesitated, wondering how to remind him, but Paul's voice spoke up first. "Luis, what are you looking at?" Luis quickly locked his screen, looked up, and replied with a grin. "Nothing, just casually browsing." Paul's eyes darkened, his expression turning serious. "Don't forget, you have a girlfriend." Luis froze for a second, then gave an awkward smile and explained. I know that. I just added her and took a quick look at her moments. That's all. No other meaning." I couldn't help myself and blurted out. "Since you know you have a girlfriend, why did you add another unfamiliar girl?" Out of the corner of my eye, Paul's hand, which was ladling soup for me, suddenly trembled for some reason. Chapter 3. Luis looked uncomfortable after my question. His eyes flickered as he stammered. "Sister-in-law, the girl took the initiative. It wouldn't have been polite for me to refuse." Listening to his weak excuse, I felt it wasn't fair to Angelica. I frowned and began. "Luis, there's no girl who wouldn't mind her boyfriend." Before I could finish, Luis cut me off awkwardly and irritably. All right, I get it, sister-in-law. Don't meddle in other people's business." "Luis." Paul's face darkened, a cold, pressing look swept over him. "What kind of attitude is that?" Hearing the displeasure in Paul's voice, Luis panicked. Paul's hand, resting under the table, reached over and held mine. His thumb rubbed lightly against my palm. As if soothing me, he looked straight at Luis, his gaze deep and sharp. "Alicia is right. You're not single. Keeping proper boundaries with other girls is the most basic respect for your girlfriend." Luis's face flushed red, then pale. He opened his mouth, then stopped. In the end, he apologized to me. "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry." After that, he picked up his phone and operated it right in front of Paul. "Bro, I get it. I'll delete her now." Seeing the atmosphere grow tense, the others hurried to smooth things over. "Let's eat first. Let's eat, food's going to get cold." The meal ended quickly, and soon everyone dispersed. Paul drove me home. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window in a daze. The neon lights flashing past along the long street were like a revolving lantern from last night's dream. Scene after scene, illusory yet real. The bone-deep exhaustion and pain from the dream felt as though I had truly lived through it. Before I realized it, the car stopped in front of my house. Paul got out, walked around, opened the door for me, and shielded the roof with his hand, as considerate and meticulous as ever. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out. After saying goodbye, I turned and had just taken one step, when Paul reached out and caught my wrist. "Alicia, wait." I stopped and turned with the pull. I met a pair of deep, searching eyes. After a moment, Paul raised his hand and gently touched my cheek. His voice was cool, yet carried a soft concern. "You were a bit strange today. Are you feeling unwell?" I froze. So he'd noticed. Of course, our families had known each other for generations. We'd grown up together for more than 20 years. I could read the slightest change in his expression. Naturally, he could sense something was off from my words and actions. After a brief thought, I lifted my gaze and looked straight into Paul's eyes. Paul, I had a dream last night. Chapter 4. I recalled the contents of the dream and slowly told Paul everything that had happened in it. Those tears that seemed to have truly flowed. That deep and piercing pain. Now that I spoke of them, it felt like wading through a river of bitterness. I stared at Paul, still full of confusion. Why did the strategy girl's appearance and name turn out exactly the same as in my dream, but your reaction was completely different? Before I could see Paul's expression clearly, he pulled me into his arms. Alicia. Something cool seemed to drip onto the top of my head. Was it raining? I tried to struggle out of Paul's embrace, but he only held me tighter. After a long while, I finally heard his voice from above my head, low and restrained, as if suppressing countless emotions. Alicia, that was just a dream. Only a dream. Dreams are always the opposite. That's why my reaction was different. The winter night wind was sharp and bitter, curled up in Paul's warm embrace. I asked in a muffled voice, "Really?" But it all felt too real, as if I had personally lived through it. Paul's body stiffened for a split second. I couldn't see his expression. I only felt the arms around me tighten again, as if he wanted to press me into his very body. Really, believe me, in this lifetime, I will only love you, unwaveringly. I won't be strategized by anyone. Listening to the powerful heartbeat pounding from his chest. For some reason, I didn't feel much reassured. Promises made in youth are beautiful, yet filled with uncertainty, like the moon rippling on water, with just a light touch from fate's ever-shifting hand. It shatters into restless fragments of silver. I went home. After greeting my parents, I went upstairs to my room. As soon as I pushed the door open, I subconsciously walked to the window. Through the white sheer curtains, I lowered my gaze toward downstairs. Paul's car was still parked there. He leaned against the car door, his black coat making him look slender and refined. The streetlight scattered a dusting of starlight over him. The night wind was fierce. He stood there in the wind, hands in his coat pockets, head lowered, as if lost in thought. My hand unconsciously tightened around the curtain. I didn't know when his promise would change. That night, I slept in a daze. The next morning, the driver took me to school. Just as I got out of the car, I suddenly saw Selena standing there with Paul. Chapter 5. A bright smile spread across Selena's face as she handed Paul a delicate paper bag. Senior, I got up early and made these sandwiches myself. As if trying to prove something, she pointed at Luis beside her. Luis and the others have some too. You should try one as well. Luis nodded eagerly, eating as he praised her nonstop. Junior's not only pretty, she's also skillful. Paul, give it a try, it's really good. Paul kept both hands in the pockets of his coat. He didn't even lower his head to look at the paper bag. He only cast Selena an impatient glance, his voice flat and faintly irritated. No. The smile on Selena's face stiffened. She forced herself to step forward and offer it again. Senior, this is my heartfelt move. Paul's face darkened. He was clearly out of patience. Selena's face went pale, her eyes instantly reddening. Senior, she seemed like she still wanted to say something, but Paul had already gone around her and walked straight toward me. He'd seen me the moment I got out of the car. Selena hadn't. She hurried after him, spreading her arms, bravely yet cautiously blocking his path. Passing students slowed down, lowering their heads as they whispered among themselves. Selena took a deep breath and looked straight at Paul. Senior, why won't you take my sandwich? Is it because you have a problem with me? Or because you really dislike me? There was no warmth at all in Paul's eyes. He didn't want to waste a single extra word. Yes. The blunt, unhesitating answer made Selena's face flush bright red in an instant. Her fingers clenched the sandwich bags so tightly her knuckles turned white. Nearby students exchanged glances, whispering excitedly. Tears slowly welled up in Selena's eyes. She bit her lip and stubbornly pressed on. Why? Senior, what did I do to offend you? I just wanted to thank you. I made these sandwiches myself and wanted to give you breakfast. I didn't make them just for you. I made some for the others too. Paul lowered his gaze and looked at her indifferently. Thank me for what? Selena froze, the fierce determination she'd mustered weakening a little. For saving me. Paul's voice was cold, I told you yesterday, you thanked the wrong person. Selena's outstretched arms trembled, but she still craned her neck to explain. You were there yesterday too, so I made one more. One extra doesn't take that much time. Is that so? Paul looked at her sharply. Then my girlfriend was there too. Why didn't you make one for her as well? Selena stiffened instantly, her face turning deathly pale. She opened her mouth, trying to explain. But Paul didn't look at her again. He walked straight past her, striding directly toward me. Chapter 6. The north wind howled. Withered leaves rustled down from the branches. Paul walked straight into the wind and quickly reached me. Naturally, he pulled open his coat and wrapped me into his arms. You waited so long, are you cold? His warm body heat pressed against me, lingering gently. I should have felt happy and sweet. Yet for some reason, threads of bitterness quietly spread through my heart. Paul, I murmured, my nose suddenly stinging, sensing something wrong in my voice. Paul quickly lowered his head to look at me. What's wrong, Alicia? My tears suddenly lost all restraint, falling one after another. In the dream, you took her breakfast. Paul froze. Then panic crept into his voice. Alicia. For once, there was unmistakable tension and unease in his tone. He patted my back again and again, urgently yet gently soothing me. Alicia, that was just a dream. Just a dream. Look, in reality, I didn't take it at all, did I? Tears blurred my vision. With my eyes closed, I wanted to nod, yet I couldn't. Everything felt unreal, like a dream, yet not quite a dream, as if I were about to wake, but hadn't. After a long while, I finally steadied my emotions and walked into campus with Paul. Selena was still there. She was squatting on the ground with her arms wrapped around herself, her sobs broken and scattered by the wind. Luis was squatting beside her, coaxing her anxiously and tenderly. Somewhere deep down, I felt as if something had quietly changed. Days passed slowly. Selena rarely appeared before us again. Occasionally, when we ran into her on campus, she would look at Paul, and her eyes would redden as she looked. Paul always kept his gaze straight ahead, holding my hand as we walked past. Until Paul's birthday, a group of people celebrated it for him at a private club. Midway through, Selena showed up. When she entered, Paul was placing peeled shrimp onto my plate. Selena's gaze paused, sorrow flashing across her face. Very quickly, she forced a smile and handed Paul a beautifully wrapped gift box. Senior, happy birthday. It was obvious she had dressed up carefully that day. Her makeup was light, with no blush on her cheeks, leaving her looking pale in a way that stirred sympathy. She was wearing a white coat, its cut identical to the black coat Paul often wore. It strangely resembled a couple's outfit. Paul didn't take Selena's gift. He slowly lifted his eyes to look at her. How did you get in? This private club required membership. Selena couldn't enter on her own. I used Luis's membership card. Selena smiled stiffly, her eyes fixed on Paul. I just wanted to personally wish you a happy birthday. Chapter 7. For a moment, the private room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. No one knew how to react. Selena stood there, looking sad and lonely. Anyone who saw her would probably feel a pang of sympathy, especially Luis. Angelica was sitting right beside him. Yet from the moment Selena entered, his gaze never left her. Bro, I'm the one who let her in. She was sincere from the start. Since it's your birthday today, just let her celebrate with us. I subconsciously glanced at Angelica. She pressed her lips together, staring blankly at Luis. For some reason, a sense of unease crept up inside me. Scenes from the dream began flashing through my mind again. In the dream, Selena also came on Paul's birthday. By then, Paul had already rejected her pursuit. But when he saw her, he didn't push her away. He only told her calmly to sit wherever she liked, a complicated look flickering between his brows. But now, the way Paul looked at Selena was filled with unmistakable disgust. I don't need your wishes or your gift. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I love my girlfriend very much, and I will only ever love her. So I hope you stop bothering me and stop doing things that make people despise you. Selena's face flushed bright red instantly. Under the crystal chandelier, the tears in her eyes glittered. She raised her hand to wipe the corner of her eye and asked Paul in a choked voice, Not even as an ordinary friend? I'm sorry. Paul's voice was cold, without the slightest warmth. I don't need a friend like you. Selena could no longer hold back her tears. She covered her mouth with her hand and ran out crying. Selena! Luis panicked, jumping to his feet and rushing to chase after her. Paul grabbed his arm. Luis, don't interfere in things that aren't your business. Unexpectedly, Luis shook Paul off and glared at him in dissatisfaction. I don't know how you can be so heartless. I really don't get it. She's a perfectly nice girl. She hasn't done anything outrageous. Yet from the day you met her, you've seemed to hate her. The more Luis spoke, the more agitated he became. Humiliating her in front of so many people, did that satisfy your rich young master's vanity? Paul's gaze darkened, as if angered, but he still spoke patiently. Luis, I'm saying this because I consider you a friend. Don't let yourself be blinded for a moment. She's not as innocent as you think. And besides, he pointed at Angelica. Your girlfriend is still here. Are you really going to hurt her over a girl who has nothing to do with you? Only then did Luis glance at Angelica, seeing her eyes red. He ran a hand through his hair irritably. Angelica, don't overthink it. I just can't stand how Paul is targeting a young girl. He looked toward the door, clearly desperate to get to Selena as soon as possible. Wait for me. I'll go check on her and come right back. As he spoke, he hurried out. Angelica watched his urgent retreating figure, tears streaming down her face. My heart ached along with hers. For no clear reason. Maybe because we were both women, or maybe because in my dream, I too had once watched Paul's back disappear into the distance. I reached out and took Angelica's hand, wanting to offer her some comfort. Just then, a commotion and startled shouts came from the hallway outside. Someone's going to jump. Quick, hurry! Everyone in the room was startled and stood up, rushing outside. A sense of dread flashed through my mind. Could it be Selena? Angelica also looked panicked. She gripped my hand tightly. Senior, let's go take a look too. Chapter 8. When we reached the rooftop of the club, sure enough, we saw Selena sitting on a half-meter-high parapet. Her figure was slender, her hair blown into disarray by the wind. Her legs dangled in the air, as if she might fall at any second. Luis stood not far from her, his face deathly pale. He stretched out his hand toward Selena, his voice trembling with fear and panic. Selena, don't scare me. Come over here first, okay? Selena turned her head and glanced at him. Then she saw Paul among the crowd, and tears instantly rolled down her face. She smiled bleakly. Paul, would you worry about me too? Paul frowned slightly, holding my hand tightly, saying nothing. The onlookers watched the spectacle, whispering among themselves, pointing here and there. Selena didn't care at all. Her gaze was fixed straight on Paul. Her face showed despair and reckless resolve. Senior, I like you. I really like you, not just because of the task. I approached you, got to know you, learned to make sandwiches to please you, created chances to accidentally run into you, even knitted a scarf with my own hands to give you. But no matter what I did, you never once looked at me properly. Your favorability toward me was always zero. Tears slid down the corners of her eyes. Like a broken doll, Luis clenched his fists tightly, shouting with heartache and urgency. Selena, come down first. We can talk. But Selena acted as if she hadn't heard him at all, her eyes still obsessively glued to Paul. Senior, why can't you just look at me once? Why can't you like me even a little? What am I lacking compared to Alicia? Just because she met you first? But only I am the one who loves you the most. I came to this world for you. I'm the one who loves you more than anyone else in this world. Selena smiled miserably. Senior, I never told you, did I? You're the target the system assigned me to conquer. If I fail this mission, I'll die. Through her tears, she repeated it again. Without you, I really will die. I froze instantly. My mind exploded with a loud boom, like a thunderbolt striking. I remembered everything. So it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a dream at all. That was my previous life. In my previous life. At the wedding, Selena said the exact same words. She was wearing a white gauze dress then too, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Paul. She said, Paul, If I fail the mission, I'll die. Without you, I really will die. Chapter 9. Every single word was like a whistling bullet. Across the span of an entire lifetime, it struck my heart with perfect precision. It felt as though my very soul had been pierced through. All that remained was a numb shell. Standing there in a daze, watching in a daze, Luis turned around, his eyes bloodshot, and roared at Paul. Just agree to her already. Are you really going to watch her die? Paul's expression didn't change in the slightest. He didn't answer Luis. Instead, he looked at Selena and said, calmly, flatly, slowly, then go die. Selena's face froze, as if she hadn't expected Paul to be so ruthless. She even forgot to control her expression. She forgot how to cry. Seizing the moment, Luis rushed forward and yanked her down, holding her tightly in his arms like he'd just recovered something precious. Selena, you scared me to death. Paul didn't spare this farce another glance. He took my hand and walked away. I was like a puppet, letting him pull me along, following his steps in a stupor, step by step, through the long corridor, down the stairs covered in soft carpet. When we walked out of the club, a cold wind carrying fine snowflakes rushed toward us. Why did it suddenly start snowing? I stopped in my tracks. Alicia? Paul, who was walking ahead, turned back to look at me. Snowflakes landed on my eyelashes. I blinked, then lifted my eyes and slowly looked at Paul. I remember now. Paul, I remember everything. The man in front of me froze. Alicia, what are you talking about? I looked at him quietly, my fingers loosening little by little from his grasp. Paul, in my last life, Selena said the exact same words. At our wedding, you went with her. Paul's face changed drastically. He reached out urgently, trying to grab me again. Alicia. I took a step back, pulling away with rejection and distance. Paul's eyes instantly reddened. He strode forward and pulled me into his arms regardless, holding me tightly. Listen to me, Alicia. Let's talk properly. I wanted to struggle, but my whole body felt weak. Something warm soaked the skin at the side of my neck. Paul held me tightly, his entire body trembling. I stared blankly at the snowflakes drifting slowly down from the sky. They fell on rooftops, on treetops, and also onto my heart. Paul, my head is in a mess right now. I want to go home first. Chapter 10. The strength around me didn't loosen at all. Above my head came Paul's voice, strained as he struggled to suppress his pain. No, Alicia, I can't let you be alone right now. Lost in your thoughts, whatever you want to ask, whatever you want to say, your sadness, your pain, your fear, or even if you want to scold me, hit me, say it all. Tell me everything, okay? Just don't ignore me. Don't hide away by yourself. And please, don't leave me again, all right? The snow on my eyelashes slowly melted, turning into an unbroken stream of tears. What I hadn't dreamed of, the afterward, I finally remembered on the rooftop. I've never been the type to scream, fight, or compete. In my previous life, after Paul followed Selena away, all I wanted was to find a place to heal on my own. So I went abroad by myself. During that time, Paul kept looking for me. 3 years later, when he finally found out where I was, there was already someone else by my side. He lived every day in regret, numbing himself with alcohol, and eventually died young. As for Selena, she failed her mission and was punished with cancer, dying in agony. So, that's why, in this life, Paul deliberately avoided all contact with Selena. I closed my eyes, feeling utterly desolate inside. You should go check on Selena first. No. The voice above me was urgent. Trembling, Paul released me, then held my shoulders firmly with both hands. He bent down so our eyes were level. In his eyes were unmistakable panic, anxiety, and pain. Alicia, believe me, I truly have nothing to do with her. My tears flowed silently as I turned my head away, not wanting to look at Paul. In this life, they really did seem to have nothing to do with each other. But my heart still ached unbearably. Paul, I really don't want to see you right now. I need some time and space. Paul cupped my face with both hands, gently wiping the tears from the corners of my eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips trembling as if he wanted to say something. After a long moment, He finally spoke, his voice filled with cautious pleading. Okay, then let me take you home first. When you've calmed down, we can talk again, all right? I shook my head, my tone firm. No, let the driver take me. You stay. Paul looked at me, eyes red, looking and looking. In the end, he nodded. He called the club's driver and instructed him to make sure I was safely taken home. I got into the car and calmly closed the door. The snow fell heavier and heavier. In the rearview mirror, Paul stood in the swirling snow, not moving an inch for a long time. After a while, he finally turned and walked back into the club. Chapter 11. Selena, of course, didn't jump. Everyone had already returned to the private room. Except for Angelica, no one knew where she had gone. When Paul pushed the door open, Luis was sitting on the sofa, coaxing the crying Selena. Everyone looked at the two of them, more or less feeling awkward. After all, when Luis had pursued Angelica so openly back then, everyone had witnessed it. Paul walked in with a layer of wind and snow clinging to him, the chill pressing hard. He strode over and stopped in front of them, looking down from above. Selena. Selena suddenly looked up. When she saw who it was, a flash of joy crossed her face. Senior, you're back. Paul looked at her with cold eyes, his voice sharp as a blade. This is my final warning. Stop coming in front of me and playing these tricks. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. I don't care at all, but Alicia is the person I care about most. The most important person in this world to me. If you dare to use your schemes on her, I'll make you pay 1,000-fold, 100-fold. Selena's face turned paper white in an instant. At the same time, a surge of fear rose from deep within her. She had thought about it. If openly pursuing Paul didn't work, then she'd work from the shadows and start with Alicia instead. But Paul had seen straight through her thoughts. She knew he meant every word. After all, with Paul's family background in North City, crushing her would be as easy as crushing an ant. Paul's harshness also made everyone present feel uneasy. This seemed to be the first time he had ever warned someone with such fury. Paul cast Selena one last cold glance, then shifted his gaze to Luis. Their family's elders all knew each other. They had grown up together. There was real history there. That was why Paul had been stopping things since the day Selena appeared. He still hoped Luis wouldn't follow the same path he once had. Luis, your girlfriend has disappeared. Yet you're still here comforting someone whose background is unclear. Luis opened his mouth to argue. Selena, she's not. Paul raised a hand to cut him off. A girl who knows full well that someone else has a girlfriend, yet still pushes herself forward. What kind of good person could she be? If you no longer have feelings for Angelica, then break up cleanly and properly. Not like this, stringing her along while hurting her. There's no medicine for regret in this world, and not everyone gets a second chance. I've said all I need to say. I hope you wake up sooner rather than later. After finishing, Paul didn't linger for a second. He turned and walked out of the private room. When he came to my house to look for me, I didn't go downstairs. My mother, not knowing what was going on, said she would go upstairs to call me. Paul stopped her. Auntie, there's no need. Let Alicia rest for now. My mother had watched Paul grow up and had always had a good impression of him. In the eyes of the elders, he and I were a pair by default. She asked worriedly, "Did you and Alicia have a quarrel?" Paul fell silent for a moment, then replied, "Auntie, don't worry. It's my fault. I upset Alicia. She has every right to be angry. I'll come see her again tomorrow." Chapter 12. For several days in a row, whenever Paul came to the house, I refused to see him. Seeing the heavy dark circles under Paul's eyes, my parents couldn't help feeling distressed. They came to ask me what had happened, but how could I tell them about what had happened in my previous life? My mother held my hand, her voice gentle yet full of concern. "Alicia, you've been such a good child since you were little. You've never made your father and me worry. No matter what happened, running away won't solve anything." My father also patted my shoulder lightly, his expression calm and kind. "Whatever decision you make, your mother and I will support you. We'll always be your strongest backing." My eyes reddened instantly, and I hugged them tightly. When Paul came again, I finally agreed to see him. Led by a servant, he stopped outside my bedroom door. I opened it. The man before me looked noticeably worn down. His eyes were bloodshot, and dark stubble had appeared on his chin. "Alicia," he called softly, taking a step forward before stopping himself. I didn't respond. I turned around and walked to the vanity, sitting down on the cushioned chair. Paul followed me inside and knelt down on one knee in front of me. He clasped both my hands in his, looked up at me with reddened eyes, and said hoarsely, "Alicia, you finally agreed to see me. Do you know? These past few days, I've wished I could cut my heart open and show it to you, just so you'd believe there's only you in it." That familiar ache surged to the tip of my nose, my vision blurring with moisture. Through the haze, I forced a faint smile. "But Paul, in my last life, your heart wavered. That day on the rooftop, I remembered the way you followed Selena so decisively. I also remembered those days alone in a foreign country, the nights I cried while staring at the moon." A tear suddenly slid down from the corner of Paul's reddened eyes. "Alicia, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." His face was twisted in pain, as if cut by knives. Even his voice turned hoarse. "I have to be honest with you. In my previous life, I gave in to a moment of weakness when she said she would die without me. For a moment I felt like some kind of savior. I thought she had pursued me for 5 years, loved me obsessively for 5 years. She shouldn't end up dying so miserably. But the next morning, when I woke up, I suddenly came to my senses and slapped myself hard. How could I abandon you at our wedding for someone else? Leave you behind like that?" I panicked and jumped out of bed, ran to your house in my pajamas and slippers, but you were already gone. Chapter 13. The snow that had fallen for days had finally stopped. Yet the sky remained dark and heavy. The lights were on inside the room. I looked at the man in front of me, at his brows and eyes, and at the deep pain hidden within them. After a long silence, I finally spoke, calmly, sentence by sentence. "Was it pity, or was it attraction? Even you probably couldn't tell the difference. That's why, given a second chance at life, you deliberately made choices completely opposite to those of your previous life. Because of your regret, guilt, and remorse from that life, you wanted to strangle every possible danger in its cradle this time." Paul's hands trembled as he held mine. He shook his head anxiously, helpless and desperate. "No, Alicia, it's not just regret. I truly love you, only you." I reached out and gently cupped his face. "I believe that at this moment, your feelings are sincere, and perhaps in this lifetime, you really won't soften your heart again. But Paul," my fingertips slowly left his face as I looked straight into his eyes, "I can't forgive this lifetime's you." On behalf of the me from the previous life, I admitted that I still loved Paul, but between us, a crack had already been torn open. Even if in this life he had never hurt me in the slightest, I couldn't pretend that what happened in the previous life had never existed. Paul's eyes were bloodshot, his face drained of all color. He clutched my hand tightly and asked in a trembling voice, "Alicia, what do you mean by that? Are you abandoning me?" I looked at Paul, his face filled with anguish, and tears streamed down my cheeks as well. But there was no way. There was no way for me to forget the betrayal of my previous life. "Paul, go back. Some things can't be made up for, even if you get to live a second life." Paul struggled, trembling all over. Slowly, he lowered his head and buried his face in my palm. Scalding tears soaked into my hand. Chapter 14. I still went ahead and completed the procedures for studying abroad. On the day I left, I didn't notify Paul, but somehow, he found out and rushed to the airport before I boarded the plane. He was still wearing that black long coat. The loose strands of hair on his forehead were in disarray from running. The rare winter sunshine streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the terminal. Paul stood in the light and shadow, his eyes red as he looked at me. "Alicia, I know I can't stop you, but I want you to know this. As long as you're still single, I won't give up on you. If you truly fall in love with someone else, then I will." Paul paused. When he spoke again, his voice seemed soaked in endless sorrow. "I will also give you my blessing." I lowered my eyes, not knowing what to say. After a long moment, I could only manage one sentence: "Goodbye." As the plane rose above the clouds, it felt as though I had been reborn once again. Chapter 15. Later, I heard that Luis and Angelica had broken up. In fact, in the previous life, they never ended up together either. Angelica's family background wasn't strong, and Luis's family had long arranged a well-matched political marriage for him. It was just that in this life, because Paul didn't choose to save Selena, didn't add her contact information, that triggered a series of interactions between Luis and Selena, which directly led to Luis and Angelica breaking up ahead of time. This time, Selena's mission still failed, and she could only accept the punishment of terminal cancer. At first, Luis often went to see her and paid her medical bills, but as Selena's condition worsened, her once exquisite beauty no longer held any attraction. Gradually, Luis stopped asking about her altogether. He had only been driven by lust to begin with. What you can't have always seems the best, but Selena was unwilling to accept it. Not only had her mission failed, even her backup option, Luis, no longer wanted her. One night, she escaped from the hospital, drove a car into Luis, and crushed both his legs. She herself was sent to prison as a result, before she could ever be released. She died there from cancer. As for Paul, he came to see me abroad again and again, until one day, when I appeared in front of him, my arm linked with my husband from my previous life. Only then did he finally give up. You see, even if life is restarted once more, it still can't rewrite the ending of the story. The process may be different, but the destination is always the same.